Let's bring in our political experts, former DNC Chair Donna Brazile, former New Jersey Governor Christie, former RNC Chair, Trump White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. Reince, let me begin with you. This was even more sweeping than you predicted yesterday. What is the mandate now for Donald Trump?
Well, I predicted he'd be over 300 electoral votes. I predicted he'd be 304 or 310. I'm not surprised by what happened. The mandate is massive because it was one of the biggest victories in modern political history, maybe one of the biggest political victories in our lifetime. The reason it was so massive was that he created a diverse blue-collar coalition in this country made up of Hispanic voters, black voters, Asian voters. It was across the board. And it wasn't just a ground game thing. The ground game was pretty good on the early vote, as we talked about. He came reasonably close in New Jersey, in Minnesota, in New Mexico. There was no ground game there. People heard what Donald Trump was preaching, and people in this country liked it. And they rejected the policies of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and there was no room for her in this debate. I mean, this was, and he's going to win the popular vote, perhaps. When
you look at the breadth and depth of this victory, Donna Brazile, is there anything the Democrats could have done?
Oh, George, my list is so long, I may have a whole new book out before the end of the day. Look, I thought it could be an electoral gumbo coalition where you repair that blue wall for good, but you expand the electorate. I thought she could expand with more young people. I thought with abortion on the ballot, freedom, democracy, that she could have a sweeping turnout operation. Look, for every 2 votes that they got out in cities, Donald Trump was getting 4 to 5 votes out in the rural areas and the suburbs. And for whatever reason, the Democratic coalition collapsed in places where they should have been strong. I was talking to Chris throughout the night about blue states like Illinois coming in 2 hours late. His state, New Jersey, coming in almost 4 hours late. The Democrats are going to learn the lesson. They're going to rebuild the party, expand the coalition. It's going to take time. We shouldn't focus on finger pointing and what went wrong with a 107-day campaign. We should focus on how we rebuild for the future.
Christie, Donald Trump talked about unifying the country last night. Can he do it? Will he do it?
Can he do it? Sure, he could. Well, look, he could decide for himself that what he wants his legacy to be is that he took this election victory and he turned it into something bigger. And he likes bigger. And so if he could become convinced that some achievements that people could agree on would be bigger, maybe he'll do that. Will he? You know, I think that's up for grabs. I think if you base it on his past performance, you'd say probably not. But look, this is a guy who's made this now extraordinary comeback. I don't think there's any other way to put it. And now he's got to decide. And I said this earlier this morning, George, that, you know, from the time he gets in there, he's a lame duck. And certainly he's got 2 years, I think, to do substantive things before the next phase starts to come and people start to look ahead. So that tends to focus the mind a bit, too, on what do I want to get done, because it's not another campaign and maybe another 4 years. So I think, can he do it? Yes. Will he do it? That's anybody's best guess.
So what do the first 100 days look like?
Well, I think he's going to try to fulfill the promises that he made.
The question is which ones? That's what I'm asking.
Well, I mean, number one, I think he's going to sign an executive order on deporting criminal illegal immigrants that are here, violent criminals. Number two, I think he's going to open up drilling leases. Obviously, he's got to get his cabinet through. He's got to work on taxes. It's probably going to take up the entire legislative agenda is the renewal of the tax cuts, and it looks like he's going to be able to get it. He's going to have an increased. He's dragging with him new senators. Probably will keep the House of Representatives. Donald Trump is going to go in there with a national mandate, along with a House and a Senate that's going to be Republican.
What about the other things he talked about in the campaign? Pardoning the January 6th protesters, firing the FBI director Christopher Wray?
He may. I would expect he will do all those things. I mean, I think people should understand. But Donald Trump came into this campaign, especially the conclusion, telling the American people exactly what he's going to do. And he wasn't like he was hiding it in the end. He actually was even bolder at the end. And the American people heard the choices, and they overwhelmingly picked Donald Trump, along with all the things that some people may not like, But that's what he won on.
So, Donna, what does that mean for the Democrats? What should Kamala Harris say today? What should Democrats do in those first 100 days?
Look, I think you win with grace and you lose with humility. I think she has to explain to her supporters where she fell short. And she also has to, hopefully talk about the future where the president and vice president invite the president-elect to the White House, work on a transition. I mean, part of what the American people want is to see us work together. And I think that's something that she has to do today. I don't think she needs to go through recrimination and figure out who did what right and whatever. She needs to focus on the future, as she said during the campaign, and that involves transition with Donald Trump.
Chris, let me end with you. If you were still advising Donald Trump, what is the first thing you would tell him to do on January 20th?
First thing I'd tell him to do on January 20th is to make sure that he puts together the best group of people he could possibly put together to take full advantage of the mandate that the American people have now given him. That can evaporate very quickly if you're under scrutiny and criticism and people start to back away. So put the best group of people around him you can. And the last thing I'd say, George, is, we've been talking about democracy a lot in this campaign. Both sides threw it around a lot. This is democracy. Some people are going to be happy, some people are going to be unhappy, but democracy is what happened last night. And now what I think Donald Trump needs to do is get a great group of people around him to try to take full advantage of what he's been given.
Much more on the consequences coming up in our next hour. Thank you all very much.